Something is happening inside the garage right now that has every crew chief, every spotter, and every driver on edge. And if what's being whispered turns out to be true, the race you think you're about to watch could look completely different by the time the green flag actually drops. Stick with me to the very end, because the last piece of this story changes how you'll watch every single lap this weekend. This isn't just another weekend on the calendar. This is one of those tracks where a single heartbeat of a decision can turn a title contender into a spectator before the checkered flag ever comes out. And right now, with fresh conversations reportedly happening behind closed doors, a lot of people are asking whether the race everyone was expecting is about to get flipped on its head. What makes this even harder to process is the timing. If these conversations turn into real, official decisions, teams are going to have almost no time to react. At a track where the tiniest edge decides everything, even one small tweak to the rulebook could reshape how drivers handle qualifying, how they approach strategy, and how they play those final, nerve-shredding laps that make this style of racing so unforgettable. So let's get into exactly what's reportedly on the table, and why it could end up shaping one of the biggest races of the entire season. At the center of it all is word that Nascar is reportedly weighing several last-minute competition changes ahead of the Quaker State 400 at Pocono Raceway. Nothing has been made official yet, but multiple people close to the sport say officials have been quietly working through a handful of possible adjustments that could touch both safety and the overall shape of the racing, and they're reportedly doing this before teams have even unloaded their haulers for one of the most chaotic events on the entire Cup Series schedule. And if you've been watching superspeedway racing this year, none of this should come as a shock. We've watched 3 wide battles, photo finishes, and moments that remind you exactly why this style of racing hooks people in the first place. But we've also watched the other side of it. Aggressive pack racing has, once again, produced massive multi-car pileups capable of eliminating half the field in the blink of an eye. Fans love the chaos and the drama right up until the moment a championship run gets wiped out because one move, at one instant, went sideways. The first big idea reportedly being discussed involves dramatically stricter aerodynamic inspections, both before qualifying and again before the race itself. On paper that might sound like a minor procedural tweak, but inside the garage it could be a much bigger deal than it appears. NASCAR has spent a lot of energy over the past few seasons trying to shut down every gray area teams keep finding in the rulebook. Every single organization in the sport is hunting for tiny gains, and at a superspeedway, where cars run inches apart at nearly 200 miles an hour, even a sliver of an aerodynamic edge can be the difference between winning and finishing outside the top 20. According to the reports, officials are reportedly looking at tightening body template checks and putting far more scrutiny on rear spoiler alignment. The idea, in theory, is simple: strip away even the smallest aerodynamic advantage before a single car ever touches the racetrack. That might not sound thrilling to a casual viewer, but any crew chief will tell you those tiny details are everything. At a drafting track, the smallest gain in drag or stability can completely change how well a car pushes the car in front of it, how cleanly it slices through the air, or how easily it holds its spot in the draft. If these inspections do get tightened, some teams could be scrambling to make emergency setup changes right up until the moment qualifying begins. The second storyline is arguably even bigger, because it could change the way the actual race unfolds. Multiple insiders say NASCAR is also reportedly reconsidering how race control handles aggressive blocking. Anyone who has watched a race at this reconfigured speedway already understands why this conversation is happening. Since its rebuild, this track has produced some of the wildest, most unpredictable racing anywhere on the schedule. The draft creates blistering closing speeds in the final laps, and drivers are constantly forced into split-second choices: hold the line and defend the position, or back off just enough to avoid triggering a massive wreck. Too many times, those defensive instincts have ended in violent, multi-car crashes. According to what's being reported, NASCAR could be preparing to instruct race control to take a much harder line on dangerous blocking. That means drivers could start facing real penalties anytime officials believe a move unnecessarily put other competitors at risk. If that becomes the new standard, it would mark one of the most significant officiating shifts of the entire 2026 Cup Series season. Think about what that actually means. Drivers have spent years learning exactly how far they can push it in the closing laps of a superspeedway race. If that line suddenly moves, everybody has to relearn it, veterans, rookies, spotters, crew chiefs, all of it. That single shift could completely rewrite strategy for the final 10 laps. Instead of throwing a late, aggressive block, drivers might start playing it safer, staying patient in line, and picking their moments far more carefully, all because they know race control could be watching with a much shorter fuse than before. There's a third piece of this story too, and it's arguably the most safety-driven of all. Reports indicate that the tire manufacturer and Nascar have gone back through data collected from previous races at this reconfigured track. A brand new tire compound looks unlikely at this stage, but officials could still issue updated guidance on minimum tire pressures or camber settings if any new safety concerns surface before practice gets underway later this week. That might sound like a small technical footnote, but inside the garage, it's anything but. Tire pressure affects grip, durability, heat buildup, and overall balance. Camber settings determine exactly how the tire meets the track surface, especially through high-speed corners. Even a minor shift in either one can change handling, tire wear, long-run pace, and how aggressively a team is willing to set up their car for race day. That's exactly why crew chiefs across the garage are going to be watching every technical bulletin NASCAR puts out before the weekend gets rolling. And here's where all three threads come together. Superspeedway racing has always lived and died on tiny competitive edges. One small rulebook clarification, one updated inspection step, one revised technical note, one new officiating philosophy. Any single one of those can completely reshape qualifying setups, pit strategy, drafting alliances, and how a team executes a race from the drop of the green flag all the way to the checkered flag. That's exactly why these behind-the-scenes conversations matter so much, even before a single thing becomes official. This track has delivered some of the most chaotic, unpredictable, unforgettable finishes anywhere on the schedule since its reconfiguration. NASCAR clearly wants to protect that identity while also cutting down on unnecessary risk wherever it can. That balance has never been simple to strike. Fans want tight, close racing. Drivers want the freedom to race hard for a win. Teams want a fair, level playing field. And NASCAR is stuck in the middle, trying to keep the competition both exciting and as safe as it can possibly be, without stripping away what makes this kind of racing special in the first place. If any of these reported changes actually get finalized before the green flag drops on the Quaker State 400, teams are going to have almost no runway to adjust. That alone injects even more unpredictability into a race that already carries more unknowns than almost anything else on the calendar. And honestly, that's exactly what makes this weekend so fascinating to watch. This might end up being more than just another Cup Series race. It could be the first real test of a completely different approach to balancing competition and safety at one of the sport's toughest tracks. Whatever NASCAR ultimately decides over the next few days, every driver, every crew chief, and every fan is going to be locked in, because even the smallest rule change has a way of becoming the biggest storyline once the field takes the green flag. Step back for a second and look at the bigger picture here, because this whole situation says a lot about where the sport is right now. NASCAR is constantly hunting for that sweet spot between delivering the kind of edge-of-your-seat racing that keeps people glued to their screens, and giving drivers the safest possible environment to compete in. That balance is never easy to find, and it's especially difficult at a track like this one, where the margin for error is razor thin. If these reported changes do become reality, the impact won't stop at just one race weekend. They could shape how teams prepare for every future superspeedway event, how drivers approach those white-knuckle closing laps, and how officials handle aggressive racing for the rest of the season. That's exactly why everyone up and down the garage is watching so closely over the next few days. As fans, it's fair to say we're caught somewhere between excitement and nervous anticipation. Part of us wants that thrilling, side-by-side, anything-can-happen racing that superspeedways are famous for. But another part of us knows how gut-wrenching it is to watch a race end with a massive wreck that takes out half the field before anyone even gets a shot at the finish. If NASCAR can find a way to make small, smart adjustments that improve safety without draining the excitement out of the race, that's something absolutely worth paying attention to. So here's the real question. Should NASCAR tighten these inspections and crack down harder on aggressive blocking? Or would that end up stripping away the very thing that makes superspeedway racing so electric in the first place? That's a debate that's going to keep going all week, and it's one worth thinking about seriously, because the answer might just define how this entire era of superspeedway racing is remembered. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.